ISERROR and IFERROR with VLOOKUP. Have you ever felt those last few minutes before an examination or an interview, the one where everyone is busy making sure they've got everything on them? A student will make sure they've prepped all the answers and mentally tick off if they've got all the stationery they require. An interviewee, on the other hand, is busy making mental notes and checking to see if they've got all the required documents. Now, imagine if someone took away this little screening process. It'd be a horror show, wouldn't it? A student would probably forget a geometric instrument, or an interviewee could miss out on carrying some important documents. What do you think is a better approach? Being prepared and ensuring everything goes smoothly, or being ill-prepared and laid back when nothing goes smoothly? It is as obvious to me as is to you, the former. Since we've been learning Excel, let us depict how this scenario applies to a dataset with an enormous amount of data. Using a formula that returns an error and trying to resolve that error while sifting through tons of data is extremely tedious, especially when you've worked so hard to put it all together. How do we avoid this deadly dull task? Excel gives us the solutions to this on a platter, the IFERROR and ISERROR function. Understanding the IFERROR function. The IFERROR function helps us gauge if a particular formula used in Excel contains an error or not. For each possibility, the IFERROR function returns a different value. If an error exists, it returns a value that we specify. If an error does not exist, it merely returns the value that we should attain from the formula. The syntax is, where argument is the formula that needs to be checked for an error, and value if error is the value that should be returned if an error exists. Points to remember are, if error will only evaluate the following. So, if the function returns a value if error, then the error belongs to any of these. If any of the two parameters in the IFERROR function syntax is an empty cell, the IFERROR functions assumes it to be an empty string value. Checking for an error in VLOOKUP with IFERROR. Let us implement the IFERROR function. The IFERROR function is given as is equal to IFERROR open parentheses VLOOKUP open parentheses 300, A2 is to C11, 2, false, close parentheses, 2, close parentheses. Where argument is VLOOKUP open parentheses 300, A2 is to C11, 2, false, close parentheses, and the value if error is 2. This clearly indicates that an error is present. Another way of doing this is simply writing VLOOKUP and applying the VLOOKUP function in the current worksheet. What do we do if we have multiple VLOOKUP functions present in the sheet? We simply assign the cell number where the concerned VLOOKUP function lies. The VLOOKUP function lies in F7, and that's why we assign F7 to the argument parameter. That was all there is to IFERROR function. It is easy to understand and implement. Since we've learned all about VLOOKUP and all about IFERROR, let's move on to the ISERROR function in Excel and then understand how to use it with VLOOKUP. Understanding the ISERROR function. The ISERROR function, unlike the IFERROR function, will return a Boolean value. This is really helpful when it comes to large Excel worksheets where there are multiple formulas. If there are interdependent formulas, it could lead to incorrect values if there is the slightest error in even one of the formulas. The syntax for the ISERROR function is equal to ISERROR open parentheses value close parentheses, where this value can be any formula or the reference to the cell holding the formula. The ISERROR function returns a Boolean value, which can be either true or false. The function returns true if an error exists in the formula, else it returns a false. Points to remember are, the ISERROR function returns true if the following errors exist. Let's implement this function with the help of a VLOOKUP function. Using ISERROR to detect an error with VLOOKUP. Step 1. Create a table containing data pertaining to the name, roll number and number of items of a group of people, like this. Step 2. Given the roll number of a person, we shall use VLOOKUP to find the corresponding name of the person. The formula for VLOOKUP will be which returns the right value. Step 3. Let us implement the ISERROR function that can be written as the ISERROR will return false because there is no error in the formula. Let's try this again, but this time induce an error into the formula. Step 4. Revise the VLOOKUP formula to where we have revised the table array parameter. Step 5. Now let's use the ISERROR function and see how it goes. That's it. The ISERROR function returns the true value, which is a clear indication that an error exists in the formula. To conclude this lesson, we have learned about the various types of errors that could occur due to the VLOOKUP function. We also learn about two functions that we could use to detect the error beforehand.